So now we get to move to our final panel of the day. And I would like to welcome, let me get my notes here. I know that Chris Clark will be coming up. Chris is going to moderate this next panel. This will cover strategies and tools that will enable Georgia businesses to achieve both sustainability and profitability. I'd like to welcome one by one. We have Meredith Linval, who will come on up. David Malone from Gas South. He's our Chief Sales and Marketing Officer. And Josh Ragland. And Chris will be moderating this great panel that will talk about how businesses are really putting sustainability solutions into practice. Chris, take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you. All right, I need your help landing this plane today. All right. Thank y'all for sticking around. Thank you guys for being with us. We're going to try to let this be a little bit of a summation of what we've heard today and get a little new perspective as well. All three of you guys, I think, to make sure that everybody heard Kevin clearly. Meredith is Director of Waste and Recycling at Cox Enterprises. David is Chief Sales and Marketing at Gas South. And Josh is our Chief Sustainability Officer at Norfolk Southern. All three great Georgia companies engaged in this sector for a very long time. So I'm going to start off, David, I'm not going to go to you first, all right? Since you said, I'm not the sustainability expert, and I appreciate the fact we've had folks that are and people that aren't, but are in the mission. So I want to start, Meredith, with you and Josh, both of you. Tell us in your view, with all the work that you've done over the years with your companies, what does a world-class sustainability program look like? What is that in your view for people to take away today? What does that look like?
I'm happy to tackle that one. So I think you'll hear a lot of the similar themes that you heard throughout today, but at Cox we have 6 key levers that we believe are part of an excellent best-in-class sustainability program, and we think about them in 2 buckets. So first and foremost, we want to reduce, reuse, eliminate as much as we can within our 4 walls. So we have 4 key levers that we pull there, and the first one there is projects. You all have heard a lot about that, and that can be capital projects, that can be operational projects. Second is technology and data. I know we've heard a lot about technology and data, and I want to just let you all know that my data person is here. If you have questions, she's over there on this side of the room. The third lever that we pull is really education, behavior change, and employee engagement. I heard Jennifer talk a lot about getting employees involved. This isn't something that you tackle. Cox has really aggressive goals, 0 waste to landfill by 2024, which I'm responsible for, and by my watch, wow, that is in less than 6 months. And then energy and water neutral by 2034. And we don't do that sitting in a corporate sustainability office. That really requires employee engagement. And we actually have 2 folks here, one from each of our green champions at each of our core businesses at Cox Automotive and Cox Communications here today. And then we also have a lever to pull with supply chain. A lot of you all have talked a lot about suppliers. A lot of you are suppliers here in the room with Cox, and that's a really pivotal part of our sustainability strategy. And then when we talk about external sides, we talk about market development. How is Cox going to achieve a 0 waste to landfill goal by ourselves? And we know that we're facing a lot of the same challenges. There might not be recycling infrastructure, or perhaps there's not EV infrastructure, other things like that. So how can we be a part of building that infrastructure that not only helps Cox make progress toward our goals, but helps everybody in this room and across the country make progress on their sustainability journey? And the last lever for our external strategy is professional knowledge sharing. That's the reason I'm here on the stage today. Everyone here is tackling really challenging sustainability problems, and the best thing we can do is share what we've learned from mistakes and wins and really move forward together on these aggressive journeys.
That's great. You'll have a tremendous engagement and program with your employees, so we're actually learning from them. So we've met with you all several times now. As I think about what takes a first best-in-class sustainability program, I think of our journey. And it started in 2007 with our formal program and our first chief sustainability officer. It takes time. It is a long journey. You're not going to get there overnight, but it also takes leadership. And we're very blessed to have 3 CEOs that I've worked with that are all focused on sustainability and actually incorporate that in our strategic plan. It is part of our strategy as we think of how are we going to meet our goals of service, productivity, and growth.
I think that's interesting with both your companies, and just touch on this for a minute, because we've heard it from Coke this morning. This isn't just a one-off tucked down in the marketing department. No offense on the marketing department. But anywhere, I mean, it has to be a decision made at the top levels by the board, by the CEO. Speak just a little bit to that, if you will, about just why that's so important.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to add is you really need that sustainability person, that head person reporting to the top of the value chain. You've got to have engagement with the senior leadership, including the CEO and the board of directors. They all need to understand that the business of sustainability is good. It's good for the environment, it's good for your people, and it's good for the bottom line. And that's really how you drive the sustainability message throughout the organization. It becomes part of your DNA.
I was going to say it's definitely tone from the top. So, the Cox Conserves department actually used to be in the Cox family office.
Right.
So when you talk about buy-in from the top and really making this a part of the way that Cox does business and the way that Cox lives and breathes its culture, it really comes all the way from the current CEO, Alex, and then each of the divisional presidents as well. And then it's really out in the field. Our over 50,000 employees have opportunities to engage with sustainability KPIs at each of their businesses and at each of their locations. So it's really something from a grassroots efforts to the middle and all the way to the top. And similarly, there is a section of the board of directors that's dedicated to environmental social governance.
That's fantastic. I think that's a good lesson learned takeaway today. Somebody can hashtag that out, by the way. Leadership matters on this. It's got to come from the top. I want to come back for a different perspective, right? And so we talked a lot today, David, about natural gas and other support as people trying to move into this area. And so talk to us about the kind of tools and the ways that a company like Gas South helps the Cox and other companies get to those sustainability goals.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me to this, and it's been an awesome event today, and we've been really proud to be a part of it. So Gas South has numerous options to help companies reduce their Scope 1 emissions. And there's three I want to talk about. One being certified natural gas, which is gas that meets a higher sustainability standard with lower emissions. So that's something that we can offer to companies. You've heard a lot about RNG today. It's really, really exciting. Kevin kind of mentioned that it's a 2-for-1 benefit where it removes methane that would go into the atmosphere, but then also offsets fossil fuel natural gas. So that's another thing that we can provide to customers. And then lastly, we have a product, it's our newest product called Flex RNG, which combines RNG with carbon offsets. And basically, a customer can determine how much of their natural gas that they want to displace with RNG, anywhere from 5 to 100% of their natural gas. And then the remaining emissions are neutralized through carbon offsets. So we think this is a great product. It can grow as your sustainability goals grow. It's very budget and goal focused. So just to be really practical, how we would do this is we would sit down with the company and really try to understand their budget and their sustainability goals. We would understand what kind of projects they want to invest in on the RNG side. And then we would work with third parties to purchase environmental attributes that meet those requirements. Then we would retire those attributes in the company's name and provide monthly reporting on kind of the retirement date, the serial numbers, the registries, and those types of things. So it's a great product. Doesn't have any operational issues because it doesn't affect your natural gas service. And we do all the tracking through a third party to make sure that the administrative burden is very low.
So not only are you providing the product, but you're also helping with the reporting at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Not bad. And I want to talk about reporting for a minute. Meredith, it's interesting. I think it was 12 years ago, we had the head of sustainability for Cox, which at the time was one of the first companies in Georgia to have a sustainability chief, come to our board meeting and start this conversation about moving down this road. And you guys really inspired a lot of folks. You provided the resources and the learning that you've learned firsthand. I'm curious, though, what data and metrics have y'all used that really do show the return? Because we talk a lot about data, but nobody says, well, here's the data point that means this is working and it's worth our time. Share some of those with us.
Sure. So we have more data than you can shake a stick at. But one of the primary things that we share with leadership about projects specifically would be our internal rate of return. So it's really important to consider, especially when you're early in your sustainability journey, you know, sustainability is an operational inefficiency challenge. So ideally there would be savings that you can pair with that. So when we look at specifically capital projects, so there are teams dedicated to doing solar projects and rainwater harvesting and food dehydrators that someone just mentioned. So having models that can calculate the return to the company are really, really important in sharing with leadership. One of the things I do want to share with you all, though, that we learned is we're really good about sharing that financial return information upstairs. But be sure you share it with the folks on the ground that are actually working with that project, the folks that are doing the day-to-day operations of that project. Be sure you share that with your supply chain partners. That's just a lesson that we've learned, is that's what really makes people feel that they're a part of the mission and that they are contributing to a great sustainability that the company is on. So calculate that IRR. A next thing that you should consider is a full cost accounting approach. So some of these things are really industrial engineering problems. So maybe the capital financial return looks a little bit different, but maybe there was something that you had a time savings by putting into place a new sustainable practice that allowed housekeeping to focus on something else. Or maybe you found a more efficient way to do a process in a call center that allows those call center folks to spend more time on the phone with customers. So I would just encourage you all to think about that other aspect. It might not just be utility savings. There might be other savings that you can consider sharing with people, or other business process operations that are really going to resonate across the company. And again, just please share those with the boots on the ground folks, because that keeps them motivated. And the other thing there is each company has a love language. So one of the things that we be sure that my team is sure that we do is translate what we're working on into a KPI that makes sense to that business. You know, talking about waste and recycling or carbon or things like that, that might not make sense to all levels of an organization, perhaps in the cable business. So translating that, if you can, a normalization factor is a great thing if you can find one. Sometimes that's a little bit challenging. Other pieces of data that we share if we move on from dollars or operational efficiencies would be the actual data. What are the gallons or the tons that are associated with the work that the employees have done? And again, that same lesson there, be sure you share that as broadly as you can, because one of the things that I learned early on, tackling a goal that was zero waste, is that's all or nothing. And it's not very motivating to set a goal with no milestones of interim success. So I would encourage you all, as you set goals or think about your goals, to say, how can I chunk this up to give people opportunities to celebrate? Because again, we said these are really aggressive goals and they don't happen overnight. They're long. And so be sure that you find metrics or ways that can keep people celebrating and moving to that next milestone. So one of the ways that we've specifically done that on the Cox side is we publish a report card. I know there were some former teachers on the stage here earlier. We publish a report card. It goes company-wide, top to bottom, all the C-suites, and it recognizes every single location at a location-specific level that is doing 50% or better. And it goes bronze, silver, gold, etc., so that they can keep striving. And it really, again, back to Jennifer's point, empowers employees to set those next goals. So I would just encourage you all to think about getting that data out there in a way that's meaningful across your organization.
Meredith, I'm curious though, you have a unique workforce.
Indeed.
Yes, you do. I'm curious, do you do work, or have you found it effective to try to help employees understand how to take that same mindset home?
Goodness, our employees demand it. So you are right that we do have a really interesting workforce, and I think that actually comes from that tone from the top. But also sharing that information with them and making sure that they understand how their individual role in accounting or billables plays a part in Cox's sustainability journey. So giving them that feedback, and we always say that folks want to do this for two reasons. They want to go green or they want to save green. So it's really important to understand your internal customer base. When you're crafting your messaging, try to understand where they fall in that camp. So most of the time, we actually have employees knocking down our door saying, hey, you've put all these great programs in place at work, but how come I can't do this at home? Mm-hmm. So that actually brings to that lever that we talked about market development, is Cox employees want to be able to have the same sustainability experience at work. They want to be able to do that out in their community. So several of our nonprofit partners are here, and we do that through a lot of really stellar public-private partnerships. But it's a demand. I would say if you get them hooked on something, I say that, waste and recycling is something that everybody can hold in their hand and make a choice. So if you get that employee engagement, I promise you that they're going to be starting to ask you, how can I make these types of choices at home as well?
Well, and those younger employees, like we talked about before, that Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're going to demand it as well. So, all right, Josh, I'll come back to you for a minute. As we think about this, and you've been in your role 3 years now, did you say 3 years? What are the pitfalls? We haven't talked a lot about the risks that are out there, the pitfalls. Share with some folks here today what you think about, hey, look out for this as you go down this road.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it as a journey, so don't get discouraged. Celebrate those little successes. But I think the most important thing is partners, and you've heard several people say that today, is once you mature in your sustainability journey, you realize it takes many people to help you. It takes a number of our partners are here, environmental groups, conservation groups, university, customers, suppliers, government in some cases. And so that's what we're starting to realize as we build out our partnership network through events like this, meeting folks, networking. And it's amazing that all the ideas that you can bring together. So I would say don't live in a silo. Really look for partnerships and attend events, like this, and get out there and learn about the new technology. It's crazy to think about how drastically we're changing as an energy. The energy transition that's occurring right now. To put it in perspective, it took the rail industry 20 years to change from diesel or from steam over to diesel. And we're looking at another change that's coming up right now as we think about the propulsion system of the future, whether that's battery electric, hydrogen, and a lot of that's just now starting to happen. But it's really exciting to see the partners that are working together that are all engaged, and we're all on board heading in the right direction.
David, from your perspective as one of those partners, how would you suggest to companies that they think about the suppliers that they have, the partners that they have to have these conversations? What recommendation would you give them?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that's really important is to think about sustainability as a hierarchy of solutions. So, there's opportunities to start with what's easiest, what's low cost, what's easy, where you don't have to make a bunch of investments. And then once you kind of get past those, moving to things that are more substantive, like fuel switching. A lot of the stuff that's been talked about today around transportation is really exciting, of using compressed natural gas instead of diesel. So I think there's a lot of opportunities when you kind of think about sustainability as a whole, to look at where should I start, and then just continue on that path. And it is a journey, and it's not necessarily a destination.
Okay. Last question. I want all of you to we'll start, Josh, with you. This is the future of sustainability. I did this with the first panel. I want you to look 5-10 years into the future. What's coming? What are you preparing for now? What should people in the room be thinking about differently? And don't give us the easy answer. We'll just keep at it. We're all going to keep at it. What specifically do you see that's coming? We heard about hydrogen multiple times today. What else is out there? What do we need to be thinking of?
Well, I think of a couple of things. First of all, you've got over 5,000 companies now committed to science-based targets. And the customers that I talk with that are they've measured and they've reported, well, now they're starting to manage those emissions. Mm-hmm. And they're starting to realize that 90% of their emissions in their supply chain. And a significant portion of that can be contracted transportation. And so a lot of what I do is helping educate our folks internally, and then educating our customers on the value of rail, that we can help them reduce emissions up to 90%. Wow. So the customers we work with that committed to SBTI 2019 and earlier, they're actually setting targets for modal shift, for reducing emissions. And rail can be a significant part of that. So I see that taking place, and then I see the energy transition that I mentioned earlier as we think about alternative propulsions. So there's going to be a number of pilot projects, over the next 10 years as we, develop that next propulsion system.
Meredith?
I couldn't agree more on the science-based targets. I know that that's on the horizon for a lot of folks if you haven't set one already. As part of that, one of the things that I think is up and coming is, carbon has been a focus for a long time, and I think we'll start to see the same rigor start to being applied to both water and waste. So specifically from my view, I think we're going to see more guidance, more goals around either setting circularity goals or capturing information around sustainable materials management or zero waste goals or the evolution of thinking about stuff. My favorite question to ask people is when you throw something away, where is away? And I think as more companies start sharing where they are on their SBT journey and folks are thinking about carbon, I think people are going to start asking some of these other questions about, well, what happens to my stuff? And so one of the things that I did just want to share with you all, that if you do have one of those goals or you're thinking about setting one of those goals, you all are aware, I'm sure, of the challenge that is plastics. It's been widely covered. I think there are many regulations, of course, in Europe, and some of those may be coming over here. There's been some recent extended producer responsibility-esque things that have come out here. But what I wanted to share with you is I think there's going to be that focus. So if you're thinking about stuff, and that stuff is plastics, one of the companies in the Cox portfolio is actually called Nexus Circular, and they tackle that 60% of plastics that folks aren't always sure what to do with. So that would be plastic 2, 4, 5, and 6. And if you're not like me and you don't spend all day looking at the bottom of an item, that would be things like plastic films, hospital plastics, plastic pillows from shipping, some of the other foams and packaging containers. And the folks from Nexus Circular are actually here. So if you have a plastics question or you just want to talk trash, I would challenge you to go have a conversation with them. They're over there in that corner, 3 folks from the Nexus team, and they can talk to you about how do you tackle some of those really challenging plastics, because I do think we're going to see more reporting and more goals be set around those.
I would say there's a lot of innovation right now around the energy space, and adapting and changing is really important. I think one of the interesting things for the kind of the short term is the demand for some of these things like RNG outpacing the supply, and what that'll do for the market as a whole. So I think that's something we're watching, but I think there's going to be a lot of innovation.
Right. Good feedback. Hope you guys got a lot of notes. Round of applause for our panel. Thank you, guys. We can go that way.